guys, thanks for being with me today. I'm Cherie, this is Divinevisions Crime Readings. This is my new channel. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to be doing a case analysis today on Kegan Kline's police transcript that was conducted in August 2020. Now he's currently in jail, okay, because he was convicted of child exploitation. He had 30 charges against him of child exploitation, obstruction of justice, and child solicitation. And basically what he was doing was creating fake profiles. I think there was one significant one. I think there was other ones like Kick Messenger and Snapchat. There was different usernames he was using, but there was one particular profile that he would hide behind called Anthony Shots. He had thought that by doing so and creating this profile of this good-looking young dude who's cool and has money, that it would be attractive to these young girls who would then send him these nude images and videos upon his request. Now, in relation to the Delphi murders, police found a connection between the Anthony Shots profile and Liberty German. So they've put two and two together and thought, okay, hang on a minute, we've just raided Kegan's house, we've found all this stuff on his devices, plus this Anthony Shots profile, and it's linked to a Delphi murder, okay? So we're going to look into this a bit further. Because the person behind the Anthony Shots profile was actually in contact with Libby on the day of her murder. So let's take a look at the transcript. There were quite a few parts in that actually stood out to me. And although I am not a forensic statement analyst, I am a criminologist. And I did find some really interesting things that maybe people haven't seen before. You know, there's a lot that I always learn on other people's videos as well, and they're not experts in the field. There's just, you know, us people who are keen observers, and I know a lot of you are also keen observers. There's things that you notice that other people haven't noticed, and it's like, wow, there's another angle on this, and it does make sense what you're saying, and it kind of opens up your mind to the possibilities of other things, and perhaps things like his motive, or, you know, where the deception might be in his statement as well, when you see discrepancies in the statement, as well as just very interesting wording. And I'll get to that in a moment. Like, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about with that. It really stood out to me. And it just shows what's going on in his subconscious mind. Within any interviewing environment, there needs to be a build of rapport between the interviewer and interviewee. So this would be a comfortable environment that is created as much as it can be in a room, or, you know, with police in there. So the police might create a comfortable environment where it may seem more casual than, say, aggressive in his face kind of thing. They will be sitting back and they will be asking him questions in a calm, polite manner to, you know, basically just to get his name and address and just those kinds of details out of the way, reading their Miranda rights, that kind of thing as well. And that is to build trust with the suspect, that, you know, they're there to help the suspect. That's what you'll see in this transcript with Kline, is that in the very beginning, the police officer says, we're going to help you understand, and we're going to explain to you and help you. So it's like that kind of communication that lets Kline know that, okay, they're cooperating with me. They want to work with me rather than against me. So right off the bat, the detective and Kline are first in the room. The detective says, thank you for your cooperation. And Kline says, yeah, no problem. I know you get all kinds of crazy people. Which is kind of sending the message to the detective of, oh, I'm not crazy, you know, I'm separate to that, and I'm being good and cooperating. So it kind of is trying to really already trying to set the scene of, I'm a good person. And the detective responds with, yeah, there are some, but there's a lot of good people too. And yeah, I'd say you're on the list of eventful people that I've arrested. You're way down at the bottom as far as eventful. It was kind of a non-issue, I mean, which is good. So that's sending the message to Kline that, we don't have an issue with the way you've conducted yourself, and that's going to give Kline some confidence in the interview. So at one stage in the investigation, pretty early on when they're trying to gather information on all the devices that Kline has been using, and all the brands and models, etc., they talk about his Xbox. And so that, kind of opens up a pathway for the investigators to make comments about their own experience with Xbox, and that they've got younger children who are better than them at the game. And I noticed that in the transcript, one of the detectives was saying, yeah, man, man, calling Kegan like man at the end of sentences, like, yeah, that was shit, man. So it's all very casual, very much like mates talking. That's how they kind of come across, that it's very, trying to relate to the suspect in some way, which also makes him feel like they're on his side. So one of the main components of an investigation is to find out the background story, obviously. So the police are going to want to ask questions, and they'll use the 5 WHs. So it'll be the who, what, when, where, and why, as well as the extra question, which is how. Okay, so that's establishing a background story. So in the transcript, they'll be asking Kegan all about who he was with at certain dates, when did things happen, where was he, where was the other people, all of those parties involved. They'll be asking all about those things. Where did he live here? Where did he live there? So they're going to be creating a whole profile on all the characters that were in Kegan's life around that time. As part of establishing a suspect's background history, police will ask questions, basic questions, such as what's your age, where's your address, what's your mother's name, just things like that that are very simple, that will establish a baseline of truth. So police can see the body language of the suspect when they're answering honest questions, and they'll be able to compare that further into the investigation in order to establish whether the suspect is telling the truth or showing deception. Coming into this interview, the detectives were aware that Kegan had a 2017 interview and was brought in for questioning regarding child pornography, as well as the Delphi murder that was linked to his Anthony Shots profile. So the detectives are going to be asking questions that are very similar, or the same ones that were used in the 2017 interview, because they want to compare his answers to that one and to see if they align or if there are discrepancies. For instance, when Kegan was trying to imply that his friend had access to his account in Vegas when they were together, and when Kegan was drugged out or maybe passed out, somehow his friend may have had access to his PIN codes and all sorts of things and was engaging in child pornography on his phone. That's what he's telling the investigators in the 2020 interview, but the investigators pulled him up on it and said, hey, hang on a minute, you're just now talking about this guy, but in the 2017 interview, you had never mentioned your friend. You had said that you only had access to your phone and that you knew you had a problem with seeking out young girls for nude images. In the 2020 interview, there are lots of contradictions, and Kegan acts dumb. He says on one hand that he's the only person that has access to his phone and the accounts and his PIN codes, but yet he keeps referring to his friend in Vegas, that it has to be him. He must be the only one that had access to his phone and has been doing all this stuff with child pornography on there, and especially the underage, like the really young children. So he's referring to his friend as having access, and he says, it's when I've been drugged out or passed out, he must have had my phone. And the police are not buying it for 1 second. They're like, nah, we've already checked that out. Like, you weren't even, like with the timestamps and that, they've checked it out that most of the time he was at his own residence with his dad, at his dad's house. And these were conversations that were happening over many hours and days. In a part of the investigation, the detective asks Kegan, are you a car guy? And Kegan says, not really, and the detective says, not really. And he goes, well, I kind of grew up having to be, because my dad has a fascination with work cars. He customises them and sells them later on. So it feels like the detectives are trying to ascertain who's really behind the profile of Anthony Shots, because there's Lamborghinis and Ferraris and all that kind of thing that's on that profile. And the detectives already have GPS data. They've got all the records, the phone records, the Snapchat records, you name it, and they have already established that there are two different authors, okay, behind the Snapchat accounts and Kick Messenger, etc. So they have seen that there are what looks to be like two different people engaging in those accounts. In addition, the detective offers another explanation to Kegan as to why he believes that there are two people involved. He said that out of all of the devices that were retrieved from Kegan's dad's house where Kegan lived, those devices had complete search histories that weren't deleted. But on Kegan's phone, the search histories were deleted between the 10th and 15th of February 2017. So basically what the detective was saying is that Kegan went home after failing his polygraph test. He deleted Snapchat and Instagram off his phone. I think he was like uninstalling and deleting them a couple of times to delete search histories, any activity that he was doing or any conversations he was having in that time frame of the 10th and to the 15th of February. And it's just interesting because the Anthony Shots profile last had spoken with Liberty German on the 13th of February. And upon returning home from his polygraph test, Kegan had searched, "How long does DNA last?" So the detective asks Kegan then, why would you search for how long DNA lasts? I mean, your DNA is not on the body, right? So you know this 100%. Why would it matter how long it lasts? And Kegan says, well, because, maybe because they took my DNA and I wondered if the person had DNA on their body, if they actually knew who the person was. And the detective says, that doesn't make sense. Then Kegan says, because in my mind, I'm thinking these people think I killed someone. So if they actually have DNA on the body, they've got to know that I didn't do it. But if there's no DNA on the body, then it's obvious that, okay, well, that's weird. Failed the polygraph. And I think what he's trying to say there is that, he's failed the polygraph. It doesn't look good on him. There's deception there. So Kegan is trying to gauge what the cops know, what evidence they've got, and he's saying that, okay, if there's no DNA on the body, then it proves I didn't do it. So, and then he's saying, well, that's weird because, I failed the polygraph. So there must have been a question in that interview when he was taking the polygraph test that asked him, about him being at the scene of the crime so that they could connect him with the bodies. So on that note about the Google searches, Kegan was Google searching a lot. This was prior to him going to Vegas in June 2017, and as well non-stop searches that were happening on his phone whilst he was in Vegas on a vacation with his father, Tony Kline. So they're supposed to be out there gambling, having fun, looking around, sightseeing, and going to a brothel together of all things. But instead police are saying, well, you've been very concerned. You're so concerned about Delphi that you were non-stop searching all these things, including articles about police continuing to pursue leads in the Delphi murders. Another article was girls go missing after Snapchat messages, and the cops said that within minutes after that, Kegan had actually searched, can law enforcement trace IP addresses from social media. So in this short time of searching these articles, he has also listened to Bridge Guy's audio clip about, he said 6 times he had actually admitted in his interview, which is not unusual in itself, but when he's been doing this all in the span of a few minutes, he's been non-stop searching this stuff, it tends to stack up, as the police said. And it doesn't stop there. Kegan had also, in the same time frame, searched how much information gets stored on servers. And days after the murder, he looked up the JonBenet Ramsey case and the O.J. Simpson case. And the detective asked him, why did you do that after those searches? Why did you look that up? And he goes, well, they're unsolved cases. What do you mean? And the detective said, how do you know? And then Kegan says, well, they're popular, that's why. And then the detective says, no, I mean, how did you know the Delphi case was going to be unsolved? Because this was only a few days. And Kegan said, because they put out the pictures of him. They put out a picture of him on the bridge and a voice. And he says, I'm going to look to see if I know that person. But when you go back in the transcript and you reread that, after the cop says, how did you know it was going to be unsolved after only a few days? Him saying that straight after, he never answers it, how he seems to know, okay? So all he says is this about, because there was a picture put out of him, but this was only a few days, so how could you possibly know or come to that conclusion that it was going to be unsolved after that short time. For the most part of the interview, there is direct confrontation from the detectives surrounding the child exploitation and child solicitation on Kegan's devices and accounts. And they had found that there was various accounts under his name and his father's name. His father is Kegan Kline. So there was a Skype account and Gmail accounts under his dad's name, and there was also another account called Emily Ann 45. Now, Kegan had actually admitted to creating that in order to solicit children, the young ones, for nude pictures, but he said that there was no way in the world that he had anything to do with these younger ones who were like 5 or really young children. He was once again deflecting that onto his friend that was in Vegas with him. What really stood out to me at this point was when he was basically arguing with the detective and saying, no, that was not me, I swear I had nothing to do with that, that's not me, that must have been my friend. The police reminds him that in the 2017 interview that he had with one of the detectives back then, he had said to them that if there was someone underage, like under 16, he would talk to them. And he said, yeah, I did say I'd probably talk to them. He said, but if they're 13, 14, not if they're 3 or whatever. But what really stood out to me is that the ages that he just mentioned. He said if they're 13, 14, that's totally different. Not 3 or whatever. And I'm thinking that's an interesting number to just suddenly come up in your head, those two numbers, because Abby and Libby were 13 and 14. Yet this whole time he's trying to, fob it off that he hadn't really spoken with Libby at all. And we all know. I'm talking to you and me here, but I know there's a wider audience watching this video. But you and I both know, guys, that Abby and Libby were 13 and 14. And I just found it very interesting that he got that in his mind. He's got those ages in his mind of girls he's been talking to. So one of the biggest lies that Kegan ever told investigators back in 2017 was that on the day of the murders of Abby and Libby on the 13th of February, he was actually with his dad all day at home, and they had gone to his grandparents' house for a little while and then came back. And I think he said it was between 12 and 3 o'clock. And the police in the 2020 interview said to him, but you weren't there because your phone logged in at someone's house and it wasn't your grandparents' house, and you were, Wi-Fi was logged in, and I'm pretty sure further in the interview it said he was looking at child porn. And Kegan replied that he was at a friend's house that sells him weed. It's the only place he goes to besides his own house and his grandparents'. And the police wanted to know why he omitted that information, because out of all the friends list he ever gave, he never mentioned this guy whose house he went to on the day of the murders. So it's looking more sus and sus by the minute. It's not to say that he is a murderer 100%, but wow, this is just, why would you lie about going to somewhere, to someone's house that's a friend of yours? Now, his whole thing behind it, okay, his excuse behind it is that this guy sells weed and he doesn't want to be seen as associated with that. And, he's trying to make out this guy doesn't really sell much. It's like an ounce of weed here or there or whatever. So the police are challenging him and saying, well, you don't mind being associated with him. You are already associated with him. So it's kind of like a back and forth thing going on in the transcript there around that. But what really sticks in my mind is that he's lied to the investigators in 2017 about his whereabouts on the day of the murders. Now, yeah, I mean, you can kind of get it. Okay, maybe he didn't want to tell police that he was off at someone's house smoking weed or having bought weed from somebody. You can kind of understand that. But he completely left his name off the list as well. And I mean, there's other people he smoked weed with that he was quite happily able to talk about. So I found it really interesting reading the transcript that it's at this point, okay, where the police have said to Kegan, look, we know you were at Country Club Road at this guy's house, your Wi-Fi logged in there, you've lied about it. And then they turn around to him and say, so why are you protecting somebody? So the cop's exact words were, I've got it in front of me here, he says, I can't wrap my head around why you're willing to put all of this on you. Why are you protecting somebody else? And Kegan says, who am I protecting? What are you talking about? And the detective says, I mean, obviously you said that you didn't kill them, right? And then Kegan says, yeah, what the fuck, yeah. And so then Kegan asks, you'd think I know who killed them? And the detective says, absolutely. Absolutely, because, and you know why I know that? Well, did you know who killed those girls? He asked him again. And Kegan says, no. He's getting all flustered about it. And cop says that there was deception in his last polygraph around that. And then the detective asks if he's afraid to tell who was using the Anthony Shots account. And Kegan had deflected and blamed his friend again, that was from Vegas. It's interesting the police keep saying there's 2 players involved. And it's interesting that they're saying to him that he's protecting somebody. And it's interesting to me that they mentioned that all the devices that they had retrieved, all of the search histories were complete, except for the stuff around the Anthony Shots, conversations with Libby. And they see that it's very complex around, cars and hotted up cars, and it kind of fits the profile of someone else, maybe like his father. So I find it, very interesting that they have not arrested him for, or anybody actually, in the case of Abby and Libby. And a lot of people saying, why did it take so long to arrest him for the child porn? Why the hell did it take so long? And they had actually mentioned to him, and he actually had said that. He said, why didn't you come and get me, straight away, or something along those lines? And the police said, well, this is a complex investigation regarding, from your Dropbox account, this has sparked the largest child porn ring investigation in Indiana. And just, wow, like, it just shows me that there might be so many more players. He might be a small fish compared to the bigger guys that they might be trying to chase here, okay, and find. Maybe Kegan didn't kill the girls. Maybe he knows someone who did. And there's this massive thing that the cops are just waiting for that one piece. And they keep saying that, don't they? Waiting for one piece. And then it can all come together. So it's confusing that when you think of Kegan's voice being on the bridge, him saying he was going to meet up with Libby. If it was him anyway, it's probably another player involved. Could be his dad, but it's definitely someone linked to Kegan. Either way, whoever killed the girls, in my opinion, it's linked to Kegan and this account and possibly the child porn ring or whatever's going on there. Whoever was in the house, because that's what the police are saying, that data, okay, the GPS data, all the stuff that shows all the activity from the Anthony Shots account, etc., everything has ever been done in those houses together, and searches have been done in Vegas. Different things were searched for regarding pre-teens and all that horrible stuff as well at some stage. But the main thing here is that Kegan has been lying. He has been lying about his whereabouts on the day. He or somebody has deleted all the conversations and the apps between the 10th and the 15th of February. And he lied about the friend's house he went to on the day of the murders. So who the hell is that guy? And is he covering for that guy? Is he covering for his father? Somebody is linked to that Dropbox account, and it's in his own house with his dad. That's where all the activity's been happening. So you would think that the cops would have investigated that guy that sold him the weed that he lied about. You'd think they'd be investigating all parties. I mean, why hasn't Tony Kline been arrested? Why was there no child porn on his own computer, yet there's accounts under Tony Kline's name, like Gmail and that, on the devices that were Kegan Kline's? So it's all very interesting to me. Like, was his father that smart to know to use Kegan's? If he was involved in this, Was he smart enough? Did he know, oh, if I ever get caught, at least it's not on my devices, it's in his name, it's on his devices? Yeah, it's just food for thought there. So what do you guys think? Do you think it's a coincidence that Kegan Kline was behind the Anthony Shots profile, that was in communication with Libby, especially on the day of her murders? Do you think it's a coincidence that activity was deleted from his phone between the 10th and the 15th? Do you think it's a coincidence that he's lied about even having known her or talked to her? Or do you think that maybe he's telling the truth and that someone else was using the profile and was talking to Libby? Or could there have been two people communicating with Libby? Because Kegan did admit to speaking with Libby and her friend when they had a sleepover. And then he was trying to say he was just speaking to her friend. But, what do you think about him lying about where he was when he said he was at his grandparents and with his dad all day, which was a lie? Yeah. Is he a killer, or is he just some loser? Sicko, pedo, what do you think? Is he a killer as well? And what about his father, Tony Kline? So, I've got to say, I do have to say it, that everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But there is a lot that I've read about Tony, his dad, which is just horrific. His profile is going to be a whole video altogether. It's going to be a whole video on its own. Okay, guys? I will actually do that. I'm gonna do another case analysis on Tony Kline and his personality, his criminal history, violent history at that, and see, which one would kind of fit the profile of being a killer.